Hey, it's Webs here with more Hearthstone news, this time for Mercenaries. I was going to wait until the actual patch notes were out, but there is enough information for some of the news to actually cover it right now. What we're going to go over in this video is the leaked new event for Mercenaries, aka Yshaarj's event, and the 6 new Mercenaries that actually have all of their abilities revealed thanks to a surprise reveal by Old Guardian, who got to reveal 6 new mercenaries for the game mode, and I'll be leaving a link to his video in the description down below. So let's begin with the event. Yshaarj is getting an event on June 7th to the 21st, and of course Yshaarj is going to be the reward for it. He is going to be a legendary protector. He is one of the other old gods within the Warcraft universe, and Queen Aszhara actually got leaked out in this leak too, but we've actually now seen what she looks like, and we'll cover her later in the video. For the Mercenary event, it looks like it's going to be centered around humans and pirates. There's going to be a change to mysterious nodes where you have a chance to actually encounter a cursed treasure which will hinder you for the rest of the game, or reward bonuses that will give you additional ones at the end of the bounty, which is a really interesting little change. It changes up the metagame a little bit when it comes to PvE, but I don't know how much this is actually going to affect it. And of course we're getting new zones and bounties. That's to be expected with the amount of new mercenaries we're actually seeing in this set. And because of some of the other little sneak peek reveals that we've seen for the new set of mercenaries, we know we're actually getting quite a few new pirates, so this might be a lot easier than it currently is. So now let's look at the new Naga Mercenaries that were revealed by Old Guardian. First one revealed is Fathomlord Karathess. I'm probably going to mispronounce a lot of these because they are kind of hard to pronounce. He is a rare protector. He is a Naga. His first ability at level 5 has a speed of 6, attack an enemy and summon a 8/16 Fathom Guard Naga Frost combo. Summon another one. So this actually combos with some of the other Naga based mercenaries that we actually will be seeing in the future, but overall this is a pretty good way to generate some additional Nagas that will actually synergize with Lady Aszhara. Naga's whole theme seems to be slower abilities just to punish builds that actually have faster abilities, so they might be a really good counter for Trigor, especially one of the later ones that we'll see. Cataclysm Bolt is his second ability, which is at level 5, a speed of 6 and a cooldown of 1. Deal 20 damage to the lowest health enemy. This is kind of similar to Valeera's first ability, though it does have a 1 cooldown, which makes it a little bit worse. I don't think this is the reason why you're actually going to be running him in a build. I think the next ability will probably be the reason why you do, and because the Naga synergy does seem like a really strong synergy, just given the first 6 that we've actually seen, even if there aren't any more. His final ability is Blessing of the Tides, which at level 5 has a speed of 4 and a cooldown of 1, gain +5 attack for each friendly Naga. If this merc has less than 40 HP, gain 10 attack instead. So this doesn't seem that big, but once you consider one of the later equipments that we'll be going over, this is actually pretty good if we do have an attack-based Naga team, and there are a few attack-based Nagas that were revealed today where you could easily combo this out. His first equipment is Fathomlord, which after a friendly Fathom Guardian attacks, restore 12 health to this merc. This just makes him a little bit more survivable. There aren't that many good protector mercenaries as it currently stands in Hearthstone, and you do need some type of way to make them actually really tanky, and this is quite a good way to do so, especially because if you can combo it out, you're going to restore at least 24 HP per turn to this mercenary, making him maybe a big target. His second equipment is Hullbreaker, which makes Cataclysm Bolt at level 4 deal 20 damage to adjacent enemies, but has a cooldown of 1. Actually makes mercenaries that currently counter Valeera by generating a bunch of tokens a lot worse against this one in particular, just because of the fact that you could actually hit the adjacent minions if you do want to actually use this equipment. I don't know if this is going to be the one that most people use, but it does seem like it's a very strong equipment overall. And finally, the last equipment, and the reason why the last ability of him is so good, Tidewalker's Brooch, which makes at level 4, Blessing of Tides affect all your Nagas and summoned minions, but has a cooldown of +2. So this does mean you are going to have to rely on a slower cooldown rate, but you will increase the attack of all your summoned mercenaries, including himself. There might be some really cool mercenary build where you actually just use him as the only Naga, but you have a bunch of other mercenaries that summon a bunch of other minions that you want to get to big attack pool. For example, Murky's final ability, you could combo with this as a way to actually just buff it up pretty easily. I don't know if that's the direction you're going to want to go, but it is always a possibility. The next mercenary revealed is Lady Vashj. She is a epic fighter with the abilities Electrify, that has the nature tag, a speed of 5, deal 22 nature damage to an enemy. Damage is reduced by the current speed of their actions. So if it is a 0 speed ability, they're going to take 22 damage. However, if it is a slower matchup, it's going to take a lot less. This does actually help try to prevent some of the really fast teams to just winning out the game. However, I don't know if this is going to be enough of a difference to actually make her really good in those types of matchups. The second ability she has is Handmaiden's Poison, which is at level 5, have a nature tag, a speed of 4, deal 5 damage to an enemy, bleed 10. This is just a stereotypical bleed. It's a little bit slower than some of the other bleeds that are currently in the game, but if you can actually scale up your nature damage, since it is one of the easiest damages to actually scale up, I could see maybe seeing some play in some type of nature-based team. And finally, Reflex Shot is a Fel ability at level 5 with a speed of 7, a cooldown of 1, and deal 12 damage to all enemies. If they've already acted, deal critical damage. So this is actually just really insane. If you can put her on a Fel-based team, it's another one of those weird, why is there a Fel tag on a mercenary that doesn't really have much associated with Fel, but at least this one has some, given Burning Crusade. But at the same time, I don't know if she's strong enough to make her way in a Fel-based team. That type of team doesn't really need another fighter mercenary. It really needs another caster, if anything. And now we can go over the equipments. Icy Grass, which is at level 4, a passive ability that causes your Naga to take 4 less damage until they act each turn. This is a really good equipment and probably the one that most people will actually use if you are using her in a Naga based team. And honestly, why wouldn't you want to use this in a Naga based team? This alone just makes it really good, similar to Yu'lon and actually preventing damage from your dragons, but this is for Nagas and honestly really good overall. Witch's Mantle is her second equipment, and at level 4 it's a passive that makes enemies affected by bleed receive 5 less healing, which makes it harder for the bleeds to actually be removed. We still don't have a real big payoff for a bleed based build, but this does have a lot of future potential depending on how we do see more additional support for something like that, or if we don't. And finally, the last equipment she has is Fel Cauldron, which at level 4 makes Reflective Shot. Also gain +4 Fel damage. A lot of ways to scale Fel damage up at this point. There's little to no synergy between the Fel scaling mercenaries and the ones that actually do a lot of Fel damage, besides, ironically enough, Deathwing and Rathian, who are both dragons. And I'd rather run those two in a team than this in a Fel-based mercenary team. The next mercenary revealed is Lord Slitherspear, which is a rare fighter. His first ability is Slithering Rage, which at level 5 has a speed of 6, attack an enemy, summon a 10/18 Hungry Naga with Divine Shield and Rush, similar to Nefarian's first ability, but for Nagas, pretty decent overall. Second ability is You Lift Bro, which is at level 5, a speed of 5, gain 5 attack. If you control another Naga, gain +5 more attack, attack an enemy. Really good way to actually scale up the attack-based team, and honestly, I could see a attack-based Naga team actually forming around this and the very first mercenary that was revealed. The final ability is Enough with This Trash, which is at level 5, a speed of 4, a cooldown of 2, destroy a summon minion without triggering its death rattle, deal its attack to all enemies. So this is really good against some of the token-based mercenary teams that are starting to float around, because it seems to be a more common occurrence than it was back in the day. Though it doesn't trigger the death rattle, so you can't actually just instantly pop a murky Murloc, but at the same time, you don't really care too much about that. It does the same thing anyways, and it should prevent your opponent from just spamming a bunch of mercenaries. If token-based mercenaries actually become a problem, his first equipment is Unleash Eel, which at level 4 gives Hungry Naga 5 more attack. Pretty good overall. Probably will be used a little bit depending on how much you're actually relying on his first ability. His second equipment is Fishy Cauldron, which is a passive that has +4 attack, and this Merc always deals critical damage to Murlocs. This is anti-Murloc support that isn't actually needed right now. Maybe there's some other mercenary that's going to be revealed that supports Murlocs, but I very much doubt it out of Sir Finley. But most Murlocs right now are either casters or fighters anyways, so he would deal critical damage against most of them already, so I don't know how much this is going to matter, and probably not going to be used unless it's just for the +4 attack. And finally, his last equipment is a passive called Sharp Idea, and at level 4, after an enemy minion is summoned, refresh to enough of this trash. This should help prevent token spamming builds from doing the same thing over and over and over. It might actually be a really good counter against Kazakus, especially because he is a fighter-based mercenary too, which means he already does double damage against Kazakus, which might be the main reason why something like this is being printed. And it does show that we are getting further support for the idea where they keep printing counter mercenaries for mercenaries that might be problematic in the meta game, which is a little bit frustrating, but it is what it is. The next mercenary revealed is Tidemistress Athissa, which is a rare protector, and her first ability is Wave Crush, which is at level 5 a frost tag with a speed of 7. Deal 14 damage to an enemy. If they've already acted, give them +5 nature damage weakness. So this is actually pretty good in a nature-based comp, if you can actually combo her out with some of the other Nagas that actually do nature damage. And her layer 2 abilities actually do have the nature tag, which makes it a little bit better. But overall, it does mean she can't infinitely scale with her first ability up and up and up. And it's mainly going to be used similar to how Belinda is used in Frost builds, even though she does fire damage. Riptide is her second ability, which at level 5 also has the nature tag, a speed of 3, cooldown of 1, deal 10 damage to an enemy after an enemy attacks this turn, repeat this damage. This is basically like the old Trigor where it only actually scaled up with attacks instead of everything, and probably how Trigor should be rebalanced back to. This is a little bit interesting to see. It does scale pretty quickly if you can get the nature witness on all the opponent mercenaries really easily, along with the fact that nature tends to scale really quickly. This could get really out of hand pretty quickly if there are enough attack-based teams in the meta game for mercenaries. Overall, this probably won't be the reason why you run her in a build, but it could be depending on how the meta actually shapes up. And then final ability she has is Captive Tide, which at level 5 is a nature tag, a speed of 7, cooldown of 3, deal 20 damage to all enemies, increased by 7 for each other Naga you control. This is the reason why you're going to run her in a build. It scales with nature damage, which she makes herself actually get increased nature damage. It also scales with each individual Naga that you have, and there's 2 ways to generate tokens Nagas, which makes this really good at max level, and should be an easy way to actually scale her damage up. The only downside is she's a protector, so she's not going to be able to survive that much against some caster-based teams, but she should be good against any fighters, which that seems like she is actually just designed against. Her first equipment is Warlord Harvesh, which at level 4, Battlecry, summon a 12/24 Naga with Taunt, just to prevent her from actually taking damage, similar to King Mukla's big brother. Honestly, not a bad equipment overall. Also makes her last ability a little bit stronger. Her second equipment is Clutching Hatred, which at level 4 causes Riptide to deal 5 more damage. This is really good in a matchup where there are a bunch of attack-based mercenaries. However, if there aren't, then this is going to be completely useless. The final equipment she has is Psychold, which at level 4 is a passive that whenever this merc takes damage, refresh cooldown of 1 on captive tides. This just makes her final ability a little bit better, and actually between her and the last mercenary that we just went over, Lady Vashj, this should allow you to actually refresh this ability really quickly and not always have a cooldown of 3, which is really cool to see and a really interesting way to maybe build a Naga based team. The next mercenary is Zar'jira The Sea Witch. This is actually the witch that forced the Darkspear trolls out of their homeland, and one of her equipments is actually going to make a lot of sense with that as a reference. Her first ability is Witch's Curse. At level 5 has the Shadow tag, a speed of 4, deal 12 damage if it has already acted. Its attack is permanently halved or rounded up. This is counter for Trigor and doesn't require Trigor to actually be nerfed, even though he actually probably should be. This is probably the main reason she'll actually see a lot of play, especially if Trigor doesn't get touched in the patch notes, and is the main source of shadow abilities within the Naga base team, as we'll see with the final mercenary later why that actually matters. Freezing Touch is her second ability, which at level 5 has a frost tag. Freeze a character, they are immune while frozen. They deal 10 damage to your enemies when they lose frozen. This is a really good way to prevent whatever mercenary that might be key to your build from actually dying for a turn, and since we don't actually have the speed for it, we can't really tell if we could actually use some other abilities beforehand, though I do think this is probably going to be the main reason you're going to want to use her, especially given one of the later equipments that we'll actually see for her. Wave Thrasher is her final ability, which at level 5 has a speed of 7, a cooldown of 1. Wave Thrasher, Naga, speed 6, 17, 28 rush. Passive has 10 attack for each frozen character. This is really cool synergy with some of the other mercenaries that actually can freeze. However, this is probably just going to be mainly used for the fact that it is another mercenary that spawns more Nagas for one of the later mercenaries that will be discussed a little bit later. Her first equipment is Serve Chilled, which at level 4 causes her Witch's Curse to deal an additional 5 damage. This is a decent overall equipment. I don't think this will be the one that actually is used, because the next one is Upstart Acolyte, which gives her an additional 20 HP, and whenever a friendly character is frozen, freeze a random enemy. This just makes the defensive value of Freezing Touch a lot better, especially if it is a little bit of a slower ability. It really just depends. We'll see once the actual final notes are out. Her final equipment is Ring of Sluggishness, which at level 4 is a passive that makes shadow abilities 4 speed slower. Since she only has one shadow ability, this doesn't really affect her too much, though her main use is going to be between her first 2 abilities, which might make it a little bit worse to actually run this. It is a direct reference to the fact that she did run out the Darkspear of Trolls from their main home, which means this should be a direct counter to the Vol'jin equipment, Ring of Haste, and really cool just to see a little bit of a lore reference in a character like this. And finally, we have Queen Aszhara, who is the only legendary mercenary out of the entire bunch. She is a caster. Her first ability is Shifting Tides, and at level 5 has an Arcane Tag, a speed of 10, deal 18 damage. Damage increased by 3 for each spell school cast this game. This actually scales off of both yours and your opponent's different schools of magic, which makes this actually really good. But at the same time, it's a really slow ability, which makes her a little bit worse than if it was a bit faster. However, because she can scale so quickly, it actually makes a little bit sense. I would also probably say it would have probably been a lot better if it was like a speed of 8 instead of 10, but I guess they wanted to be a little bit safe with actually balancing her. Her second ability is Mage Paramount, which at level 5 has an Arcane Tag, a speed of 0, a cooldown of 1, gain plus 3 spell damage whenever an enemy casts a spell, plus 4 resistance to its school of magic this turn. This is a really good way to actually just scale all of your damage within a Naga team, since you do have a bunch of different random synergies within the entire team, and does explain a little bit why they did want to put a Fel based ability on Lady Vashj. I think this will mainly be used to prevent her from actually dying to any big synergy that your opponent might be pushing on a given turn, and probably is a really good way to actually make her a really good tank caster. Her final ability is Vainglorious Rebuke, which at level 5 has a speed of 3 and a cooldown of 1. Deal 10 damage to all enemies. Damage is increased by the final speed. This ability gets 2 speed slower this turn whenever another ability is used. This is a really interesting way to actually just scale up the damage on her, especially if you make her go last using Sky Admiral and her second ability. And honestly is probably going to be the reason why you want to use her in a lot of teams, and is a really good payoff for the Naga based synergy overall. Her first equipment is Aszhara, and it is a passive at level 4. Whenever you cast a shadow ability, restore 6 health to all characters. This basically makes her a shadow version of Malfurion, which is pretty decent overall. However, she doesn't have any shadow abilities outside of her last, which makes it a little bit weaker, but honestly I could see her seeing some play still in any shadow based team. Her second equipment is Tidestone of Zar'jira, which at level 4 is a passive ability that makes her gain +1/+6 health for each Naga in play or on your bench. This just makes her really tanky, and is actually a really good passive ability given the fact that you can generate so many tokens within a Naga based team. And finally, her final equipment is Yshaarj Queen Scepter, which at level 4 is a passive that makes it whenever she dies for the first time, you steal 6 HP from all other characters in play and return to life. This is very similar to Jaina's Ice Block equipment. However, I think this is a little bit worse unless it actually scales with some type of damage. If it scales with some type of damage, this could be absolutely insane. Actually, it might just scale with the +3 spell damage that she actually has. It really just depends on how this actually turns out. I honestly think all 3 of these equipments are really good for her, and she's just a really decent mercenary overall. Alright, so those were all the mercenaries revealed today, and thank you Blizzard for actually giving Old Guardian some mercenaries to go over today, because it makes this a lot more interesting. And like always, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, bye bye.